Hello, welcome to Inspiring Women with ADHD. I'm Renee Allen, the host of this podcast, and my daughter Cebre is here today. Welcome, Cebre. Cebre spelled. Do you want to tell us how to spell your name?
It's spelled Cebre with letters from the word celebrate. That usually helps people remember.
Yay! And it'll probably be written down, but yeah, it's always an intro. So I'm so glad you're here. Sabre's my first guest, and she's also my first child, my firstborn, but she's not a child anymore. She's a mom. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Cebre?
Yeah, like my mom said, I'm also a mom. I've got 4 kids. I'm homeschooling them right now. We move pretty often and chose to homeschool this move, and it's been really great. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah,
I,
that's amazing. So Cebre also has ADHD, and
yes.
I can thank Cebre for helping me know that I have ADHD. Yeah, tell us first when you first thought you might have ADHD.
Well, I mean, it's come in layers. I have a joke with my husband that I'm not good at doing long story short. It's short story long, or even long story longer. Um, I definitely had teachers in school that asked me if I had it, and I just kind of laughed in response. And then when I was an adult, so in the last 5 or 10 years or so, I had a friend who was diagnosed, and actually, I had 2 friends that were diagnosed in the same year, and one of them had posted on social media saying, "Are any of you surprised?" And I thought, well, yeah, I'm surprised because I thought we were the same. And then I thought, oh, that's what that means, is that I
Yeah,
have it too.
yeah,
And then I started looking more into it and realized that it can manifest differently in women than in, young boys. And
yeah.
so that was about when I figured it out.
I didn't even know that any teachers asked you
Yeah.
because they never
Most,
said it to me.
yeah. It was even high school teachers. Like,
Oh, yeah. That makes sense because I didn't have parent-teacher conferences with them. The
yeah.
only memory I have is Mr. Aubin saying that you blurted out the answers and me saying, well, she's just like me and I still can't help it. So don't expect it to change this year. And that was probably 3rd grade, right? No, 4th.
That was 4th grade, yes.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your teaching and what you do right now.
So I am a math educator. I work part-time from home right now. I did teach in a brick and mortar public junior high for a few years, and then I taught in an online private and charter school for about maybe 7 years. And that was live teaching, kind of like what we're doing now. And then I transitioned to working on curriculum development. So I do some graphic design as well as curriculum writing, still in math. And
So it's not true that if you have ADHD, you're not very smart. You can't get good grades.
well, I mean, you can. In some ways, school can be easier.
Yeah,
Maybe let me change that. Learning can be easier as a person
yeah,
with ADHD, or maybe even understanding. But I do think school can be really difficult. Um,
yeah,
so
yeah,
in some ways, I think the only reason I'm successful is because of my ADHD, because I was so driven to just make it work, even though it was hard. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. Because that is one of the aspects of ADHD is having that driven mind, and I'm going to do this, and then later thinking, how am I going to do this?
Right.
But you
But
figure
any
it out.
way I could figure it out, I would figure it out.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, what we're going to talk about, and it'll be interesting to see not only as someone who wasn't diagnosed as a girl, how old were you when you were diagnosed?
Maybe 33 or 34.
Yeah. And then how as a school teacher, if you spot it in girls who haven't been diagnosed, although you might not be, privy to, are you teaching? You're teaching now besides curriculum development? No, you're not teaching. So
I do some personal tutoring, but I'm not
Yeah,
teaching any
yeah,
courses anymore.
yeah, yeah. So I asked Sabre what she wanted to talk about if she came on, and she said that she'd like to talk about how girls are not diagnosed, or how it's a missed opportunity even now, and it's kind of interesting seeing the studies. So this is what Cedars-Sinai says. Despite being one of the most common pediatric behavioral health conditions, that's a pretty big statement, affecting around 6 million young people, ADHD is frequently missed in girls and teenagers, female adolescents. So 16% of girls between the age of 3 and 17 are diagnosed with ADHD, compared to 13% of boys in that same age group. So
Oh,
less
that's
than half.
6% of girls.
Yeah, did I say 16? Okay, 6% of girls versus 13%. I would say when I was growing up, it was more like 0% of girls. What would you say when you're growing up? I mean, just going off of
Yeah,
our
I
own
did
memory.
not know any girls
Anyone?
diagnosed.
Yeah. And I only knew of one boy my whole life. And I didn't know till a class reunion that he had ADHD. And his dad was a doctor. And his dad spotted it and sent him to school with a thermos with coffee in it. And he would drink it throughout the day. That was a stimulant. His dad knew. But we just thought, that's so weird. No one drank coffee. Like, no teenagers, especially children, drank. But we knew that he was allowed to, and the teacher said it was okay. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, yeah. So women often, and teenagers probably too, are diagnosed instead of being diagnosed with ADHD. If they go in and say, I'm not functioning, they're diagnosed with anxiety and other mood disorders. And I don't know if you know anyone, but I've talked to several women your age who are diagnosed with anxiety and had medication, and it wasn't until they found out they had ADHD that their anxiety was managed.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Even when I was actively seeking my ADHD diagnosis, when I was trying to share with the psychologist all of these reasons, because she was saying, why do you think you have it if you were never diagnosed as a child? And I was telling her all these reasons, and she said, well, that just sounds like anxiety. And I thought, no, you don't understand. I have anxiety about these things because I'm not able to manage my
Mm-hmm.
ADHD. And I try to explain that more, but I'm one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of my friends, I was diagnosed with anxiety first and depression.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I got to a point where I just felt like I couldn't function anymore, and I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't.
Yeah.
And it's a lot better now.
Yeah.
Knowing
Same with your
people.
sister-in-law, my daughter-in-law. And
Yeah.
when she went in with her to get a diagnosis, she was probably seen 3 or 4 times before the doctor, who is a resident, would believe her, would even take her seriously, because she just said, your life is overwhelming. You have anxiety. Let's take a new anxiety. Let's take,
Hmm.
and anyway, yeah. So I think it's interesting because the study also says that girls are usually diagnosed 5 years later than boys. And I think if you look at women, they're diagnosed 20, 30, 40, 50 years later than boys. And, it's taken a long time for some of them to get
Yes.
diagnosed.
Well, and I had heard a statistic. I'll have to find it. Maybe we can add it to podcast notes later if I do.
Mm-hmm.
But it had said that um, often women were diagnosed close to when their sons were diagnosed,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
true for you and for me.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And a woman that's going to be my guest next week, Carrie, I talked to her, same thing. She was diagnosed after her son. And I said, same with my daughter, same with my daughter-in-law, same with me.
mhm.
And my son was diagnosed, how old was he when he was freshman? Probably 18, 19. So, yeah. So what I want to talk about is just kind of go through what symptoms are missed, how ADHD symptoms can be different in girls that are in school, because that's often when somebody would notice it, a teacher that's saying, this isn't working very well, or maybe a
Right.
parent. And girls with the ADHD often are told that they're daydreaming. Even my mom, your grandma, said that the other day. They always said, "You're such a daydreamer. You have a hard time focusing." I remember people calling her an airhead, or "You're so scattered," or "There's only one Dixie," because no one else does that.
Oh, she's so tender.
Yeah, yeah. And then also, I'd like to see your input on this as a teacher, but I think that girls with hyperactive ADHD have less disruptive behaviors in school. They like, for me, I would get out of my chair and go get a drink of water. And the teacher might say, "You can't get a drink of water now." Or I'd want to get up and sharpen my pencil. I would find ways that were socially acceptable and try to not make noise. And part of that's not wanting to draw attention. I think we have a better awareness. But do you think that's true, that girls'
Yeah,
hyperactivity shows up differently?
I think so. I mean, I would write notes to friends or draw on my notes even through college. I
Yeah.
remember drawing like an entire dinosaur landscape thing on my biology notes and things like that, because I needed to be doing something, but
Yeah.
I wasn't going to be doing something that was, yeah, less socially acceptable. I think talking is more socially acceptable, and that is one way that the hyperactivity is shown,
Yeah.
which isn't classroom acceptable. I still got in trouble for it all the
Yeah.
time, but with my peers, it was acceptable.
Yeah.
I would also like trim split ends. I still do that. I'm constantly picking at my hair, or
Yeah,
picking at my
I learned
nails.
to French braid my own hair from the top back, and I'd French braid if there was a girl in front of me. This is high school. I'd French braid her hair. My math teacher let us eat in class. I'd bring oranges because you can spend a long time peeling an orange, and
Yeah.
then I'd even eat the white part to just have that stimulation. I
I
just
used to eat oranges in history, but I finally got in trouble and wasn't allowed to bring them anymore because one class, it sprayed me in the eye and I reacted. And the teacher was like, "That's it.
that's
No
really
more
funny.
oranges."
We even love the challenge of trying to peel the whole orange in one thing
One
where you could
piece.
just like
Yeah,
do it.
spiral.
But yeah, most teachers didn't like it when I passed notes, but I definitely passed notes too. And I wasn't as good of an artist as you, so I doodled more. There's a lot of
Spiral flowers and
yeah, spiral flowers. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other things. I probably mentioned on here before that my kindergarten report card said that I asked to go to the bathroom all the time because I probably wanted to get up and walk. And what grade was it that you became the greeting card person for the whole school?
well, what's funny about that question is I actually did it at two schools. Actually, no, also in high school. So that's three
Oh, that's
schools.
so funny.
So three different schools and different teachers
Uh-huh.
thought, "What can we make her do?" And they just have me leave the classroom to go do nonsense work.
Uh-huh.
And I'd walk to every classroom. So I did it in third grade probably. And I would also get up and blow my nose all the time.
Oh, yeah, I did that
I
too.
had allergies, and my teacher thought I was just doing it for attention. I remember her telling me that. And I was like,
Yeah,
"No, I need to." But
yeah,
probably also I didn't need to. And it was just me paying attention to it, you
yeah.
know?
I actually did
Yeah.
it. I didn't learn that trick until high school, and I didn't need to blow my nose. But I saw my friend get up, and I thought that's a really good excuse to get up. So I get up and pretend to blow my, like in chemistry. I mean, I was older, but
That's so funny.
yeah, yeah. I also, when I was younger, we had desks that could lift up and you had your stuff in. So I spent a lot of time reorganizing my desk, which was really fun. And then in high school, I remember opening up I don't think we had backpacks, my bag, and I would reorganize that or, clean things out. I remember a teacher getting mad at me about that. And I thought, I'm listening, you know.
I know.
In fact, that's the thing I think that's funny is I have memories of a lot of teachers saying, "Okay, you can't be doing that. I want you to listen." You think I was. And I wasn't the only one that did this. And they'd say, "What was I talking about?" And the person would always know.
I know. I was just thinking about that too, because a lot of times, probably in appearance, I wouldn't be paying attention, even when talking to friends.
Yeah.
But I was. It's actually easier for me to focus, which is an ADHD thing, right? If
Yeah.
I was doing something else. So
Yeah.
writing something else, obviously not reading a book. Reading a book is pretty immersive, but most
Yeah.
things were making it easier for me to pay attention.
Yeah.
Looking and watching meant that I could get more easily distracted.
Mm-hmm. And if you are in the, I don't know what you call it in school now, but when you're in this, the higher academic edge of the class, and you're able to finish your this is when you're younger, you're able to finish your assignment sooner. You do need things to do to keep you busy until the teacher's ready to teach the next thing.
Right.
And that was super helpful for your youngest brother when that one teacher gave the suggestion. He can always have a big book on his desk, Harry Potter, Percy Jackson. It was always there, and he could read it. And when he was done with whatever he was working on, and then she would let him know if he needed to pay attention again, which I thought was brilliant because he loved to read.
Right. Yeah, it's smart.
And made him quiet. But so sometimes maybe it's spotted more the daydreaming or the difficulty focusing, but even that, I can see that even just seen as being bored, or if you're on the spectrum and they think that maybe you're just not tuning in for that reason. But there are a lot of children with odd ADHD too, the combination. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if there's misdiagnoses. One of the women that's going to be on next week has I don't know if they call it
ADHD.
ADHD. Yeah, I saw it spelled like that. I thought that's kind of cool. But
Smart.
I'm curious if that's a misdiagnosis, if a lot of children are diagnosed with autism but not ADHD or vice versa. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And then also, I think girls socially or in society, culturally, we see them as more social beings. So the need to talk, the busybody, that kind of thing, those societal norms of, well, girls are more social. They want to have a lot of friends or, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so yeah, I think this is, go ahead.
I was going to skip ahead to the societal expectations because that's kind of where this is going.
Yeah.
I think also girls care more about what their peers think in general. And so they are being more talkative, and the society sees that as a normal thing, but also girls are moving themselves into that's how they're exhibiting those behaviors. Mm-hmm. I had impulses and inability to focus, but I did that in a way that was more accepted by my peers, not just the teacher. Mm-hmm. Whereas like my son, his inability to focus and impulse behavior led to him like cutting the girl's hair in front of him in class because he had scissors in his hand and he saw hair, and that's what he did rather than turning to the person next to him and talking to them. Mm-hmm. Right. He didn't care what his classmates thought about him. Yeah. That was not even close to his radar.
Yeah. And that's what I think so fascinating with the reasons that we would mask our behaviors as a girl. They could apply to the boys, but they don't care. And they might care about getting in trouble, but they don't seem to think, I don't want to stand out with this. It doesn't stop their impulse is what I mean. Maybe some of them do care, but it's almost like we have this window of time to like, do I really want to do this? What will people think? And then we hold it in or do something different. Mm-hmm. But I look at the boys in our family, your brothers that have ADHD, and none of them had that strategy. Like, I never want to see my name on the board in trouble. I never, they weren't able to make a goal like that. They probably didn't like being in trouble, but they were never able to make a goal like that and do everything they could to avoid it. Mm-hmm. In fact, one of your brothers always just thought I wasn't in trouble. He didn't even internalize that the teacher was upset when she had a special meeting to discuss it. I'm like, okay, this is serious. He's like, but I wasn't in trouble. Yes, you're in trouble.
And I had students like that too, where they'd come back, like they were supposed to be going to the bathroom or something, and they'd walk into my class instead and be like, hey, it's nice to see you. And I'm like, what are you doing here? I don't even ever want you in my class normally because you're so disruptive. Yeah. And they were like, well, you love me. And I thought, my interactions with you are not positive.
Yeah, yeah,
I thought they were really
yeah,
fun people, but not fun students to have in my classroom. And I always thought that was really interesting that despite constant behavior correction from me, they thought that I would also want them to just come hang out. Like that
yeah,
was they didn't see that there was a
yeah,
connection between
yeah.
that they were even getting in trouble
That's
ever.
really funny. Yeah. I also think, and I don't know if this affects schooling as much, but I just think of spending time with family and relatives and even friends' homes, going to their house to play or something, is that the expectation for the boys is that they might be jumping off the furniture. They might be doing that kind of stuff. But girls are expected to be more controlled physically. But for me, that manifested, I couldn't be. Like, I would sit on a couch and I would jump and land. And Grandma Friday would always say, "Do it again. Act like a lady. That's not ladylike." And I'd think, "What are you talking about?" And I'd
And your
stand and
younger
I'd try
brother
it again. Yeah, I'd try to have the control, but it still wasn't ladylike. And it wasn't discouraging, but it stood out to me that I wasn't really mindful of that.
Mhm.
And then also just the klutzy behavior, the running into things and
Oh gosh.
everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it's just um, manifesting in a different way, and that can be really hard to recognize.
Yeah. And not an awareness of what your body's doing, just like maybe the boys might not have an awareness of how their behavior is affecting other people. But for me, it was more how my body was either affecting me or other people. Because I remember in college, I'd sit on a couch with my roommate or come home and sit with my cousin, and they would tell me that my knee, like I was crossing one leg over their leg. I didn't even know it. And I always did things like that growing up, sitting up, my foot or knee was on the table while I ate dinner, or my foot was on the chair.
Hmm.
And some people pointed it out, and it's more talked about like on TikTok and stuff about how these are ADHD things with the ways we need our bodies to be able to sit still and
Right.
be comfortable. So
Yeah. I mean, you're even doing that right now,
yeah,
aren't you?
I'm
And
sitting on the
my
floor. I'm actually
okay.
like not. I'm in sweatpants, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm on two yoga bolsters. I'm not comfortable in a chair, so
Yeah.
I.
I'm sitting on a chair, but it's one of those wide ones that went TikTok viral, so you can my legs are crossed
Oh yeah.
because I
Oh
can't have
yeah.
my feet on the floor. I
Yeah.
can't sit. In
Yeah.
in in high school, I would
Mhm.
I would put my feet, my legs, like the back of like my calves would be on my desktop, and then my book would be up against my knees right
Mhm.
here, so I could write like that.
Yeah.
Sure, the
I
people were like,
Yeah,
"What
I
are you
think
doing?"
there's something to the knees, as a yoga teacher, the
Yeah.
knees needing to be higher than the hips or some kind of rotation of the hips. And then also in high school, it's other people pointing it out because I never knew. But I'd go over and talk to a friend for hours and hours, and my arm would be up in the air or like
Mhm.
this. And I still do it. It's super relaxing to lay down with my arm in the air. And it's kind of embarrassing when you're in a social situation and there's a lot of people there and you see that you start to recognize, like, I'm the only person in the room doing this. Or
Mhm.
maybe it shouldn't be embarrassing, but yeah. Yeah. So many things. I just figured out probably 5 years ago how to finally sit comfortable in church because you can't sit with your legs crossed if you're wearing a dress or, and leaning forward. And it's
Mhm.
interesting because societal norms, because so many things that men do to lean their head against the pew in front of them, or, kind of just don't look as classy for women or something. But I learned that if you have a skirt on, it's not short, you can always put one foot up under the skirt with your knee out. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yes, it's super. It can hide that foot and not have my feet up on the book thing because that's
Mhm.
what I usually would want to do, or on a purse or something.
Yep.
But okay, so let's talk about, unless you have anything else you want to explore there. But I was thinking of switching to some of the results of if I think more in my generation, more your generation, there were two components. The girls could hide it a little better, but maybe the teachers or the parents, definitely me as a mom, had no idea what ADHD was. So I wasn't even looking for symptoms in you or my boys who are very obviously ADHD in today's, ability to understand these things. So part of it is probably just the people who could send you to an expert didn't even know enough about it, so that could be part of it. But no matter, all of us learned to fit in or did the best we could. And what effect does that have on us now to coping? And in some ways it probably helped us. In some ways it's taught us some strategies that help. In some ways it's carried with us for a long time. So, yeah. So the first one I have, experts say could be a result for women that we can carry with, is just be emotionally exhausted in having to put energy into controlling your impulses, your body, or put extra energy into focusing or any of that. So what have you experienced? I mean, for me, I've talked about some of this. A lot of it is calming my brain, doing other things, kind of seen as multitasking, but it's calming my brain so I can listen and, but still, kind of going crazy inside when I can't leave or something. So what do you see for this? That
I mean, there's different, like I said, I'm always picking at my hair. That's a thing. But I remember being in church as a kid and realizing that I could hear better if I closed my eyes rather than watching the speaker, which was also relevant for me because I had to read lips a lot. But I have, because I had hearing issues for all the listeners. I have hearing impairments, and often I would need to read lips to be able to understand what was being said to me. But it was also difficult because I can't just look at a person and actually listen to everything they're saying, because then I'm getting distracted by everything else around me. But closing my eyes meant that I wouldn't be thinking about all the things that I could be seeing, or even getting distracted by, like, how this is an ADHD podcast, so I can do this. How, so like our eyes will adjust contrast, and there's those little things that's like an inverted picture where it's a black thing on a, like, light things on a black background, and then when you move, you can see that would always happen because it was a dark person wearing dark clothes in front of a white background, and my eyes, like, I noticed that if I moved a little bit, then I could see different things, and then I start focusing on my eye inversion.
Then you blink your eyes 100 times, and see it again and see it change
but
colors.
Closing my eyes meant that I wasn't paying attention to all of those things or trying to count the number of lights or whatever. And I mean, there's ways to function now. In college, I would chew gum almost constantly while in class, while studying, while doing homework.
Yeah.
There were things that I did to try to reduce the stress of focusing. But then there was also, I don't know if you remember, I would have emotional burnout.
In high
When I
school, for
come
sure.
home, yes. So when I come home from school, and I would read and go out to the hammock a lot, which was wonderful. And then I remember in college, I would come home for winter break, which was a few weeks, and I would just sleep for most of it. And I remember
Oh, yeah.
my younger siblings asking you, like, why is she doing this? She's finally home and she's not even
We want
spending
to
time
see
with
her.
us.
We want to see her. Yeah.
But it was like the whole burden of functioning for 4 months was done, and I could just shut down, and I would shut down majorly.
Yeah. I see that with me. Like, I hosted a baby shower a few weeks ago, and you're doing everything to make that work. And afterwards, I'm kind of I can't get anything done the next day or so, or after traveling or something. It's like I've completed that. It took a lot of energy, it was fun, but now, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why I started looking for a new job, this
Mm-hmm.
one, the curriculum one I have now that's um I had loved the teaching job that I was doing, the online one. It was with a great group of people, good values. The students were phenomenal. But like I said, we move around a lot and we had just moved and I had kind of started a new role or added a new role at that job, at that school. And we were also renovating our house that we were moving into. And so there was just a
Mm-hmm.
lot going on. And by the time we finally finished the renovation and moved into our house, our kids were in their schools. This was like Halloween time. And I just thought, I can't, I can't function anymore. Like that was all too much. And
Mm-hmm.
I need to slow down.
Yeah.
And the easiest thing to do was to quit the job. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't actually go sleep in my bed for 3 weeks because I
Mm-hmm.
had to being a mom and taking care of my kids and everything. So I thought, well, then what's another way I can find that rest?
Yeah.
And it was I pushed all the burnout to the job,
Yeah.
and looked for a new one instead. And
Mm.
which is a good thing that I was able to find one, but
Yeah.
it looked a little different, but it was the same situation all over again.
Yeah. Sometimes you need a change. You can't keep going. And I think that's one hard thing is when you have the desire to do a lot. And then part of executive dysfunction is making decisions like that, hard decisions. Like if I let go of this, then I'm letting go of that. And, there's a lot of challenges that come with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be hard. I'm thinking for me, I don't know. I think in some ways it's nice as an adult because you don't have the goal of needing to pay attention as much. Like you're not going to get a bad grade. Or, you can listen to something multiple times if you have digital access or something like that, or you can restart at the beginning of the book again. But the hyperactive part for me, I think, is where I've had to find a lot of, well, and then also getting things done at home. but that is where I've really had to do use strategies, and most of them probably aren't socially acceptable. But I still do them because the alternative is to go crazy inside. So, and I tell people in my yoga classes all the time, I do this in line at TJ Maxx. I'll use the cart here and pull one foot up, and it really does help my body too, but I'm doing it because I'm going crazy standing in line. And at Disneyland, a lot of times I do forward folds in line and stuff. And, someone, one of our kids would be like, stop it, Mom, stop it. But I have to because I can't stand there that long. Or I sit on the ground a lot when I'm in line at Disney World now that we're in Florida. But I have to do those things probably because anxiety is building up in my body.
Mm-hmm.
And really what I'd love to do is just leave. And so I find myself doing that a ton where I'm, going to the grocery store, the lines are really long. You only have 4 things in your cart. Go put them back. You don't care if you have this. Why'd you even come to the store? Just leave. And I will, but I do put things back. So,
I know,
so
which thank goodness for I do a lot of grocery pickups because I can't
yeah.
even. Oh, there's a lot. Okay, the next topic is achievement followed by overwhelm and self-doubt, and I
Yeah.
think this is related because there
Yeah.
are strategies like maybe you're standing on your leg worked for a long time, switching or sitting or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, but then those strategies don't last through different changes,
Yeah. Yeah.
which can be really frustrating when you thought, I used to be able to do this, and
Mm-hmm.
now I can't anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like I used to be able to be a planner girl and I had everything. I did meal planning. I did
Mm-hmm.
all these things,
I didn't know
but
you still didn't do that because I'm amazed that you've done that.
yeah, I used to, yeah, no, nope, I can't. Yeah, I used to know like a month out all the things that I was going to be making, which is honestly so helpful because that's one of the banes of my existence is
Mm-hmm.
realizing now it's dinner time and what am I going to be making? And
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I pseudo plan out week by week what we're going to eat and maybe buy some things for it, but I don't write it down anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
part of it is because just the energy to be able to use that strategy is now something I can't tap into.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband always says that I really, really like planning, but not actually executing. And I think he's right. And it's because I really love a system
Mm-hmm.
because I know it will make my life easier. So I
Mm-hmm.
always want to develop systems. I'm not really good at always following them,
Yeah.
but I know that if I can, then I won't
Mm-hmm.
get as overwhelmed.
Yeah. And setting up the system, planning it is the dream phase.
Oh yeah,
So
it's
there's
way more fun.
it's more fun. And if you have that creative aspect of ADHD, which you do, but a lot of people do, you love to think of the possibilities and you can organize those thoughts. You have this logical brain that like, oh, this. And it's so much harder carrying it out. And then even worse is maintaining it, because sometimes you can get it to go. You can use that momentum for even months. And then all of a sudden it's like, I don't know if this fits
Yeah.
with our lives anymore.
Well, and you have the quote on there, probably from the Cedar Sinai article, saying women with ADHD often build powerful systems to stay on top of their goals. But when hormonal shifts make those systems harder to maintain, they can feel like they're losing control or falling behind. And I think that's been especially prevalent. Like the meal planning, I did excellent with that until I had a second miscarriage. And at that point, I just thought, I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
This has changed enough. And I don't think it was even simply the grieving. I think it was also just the changes happening in my body and me needing to respond to those. And a lot of other systems that I've had, systems that maybe helped me maintain laundry or things like that, having a baby or going through pregnancy or even just the monthly cycle
Yeah, I
of
was going
your
to say
energy
if one
changing.
or 2 weeks out of the month aren't the
Mhm.
same as the other two.
Yeah, it makes it so hard.
Yeah.
I think about all the like dieting plans that you or exercise plans, but it really needs to be more of a sinusoidal type plan because our hormones change so much and our energy ebbs and flows so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is a lot of frustration with yourself when you feel like, but I set this goal and I know I can achieve it, and then you're not. But it's
Yeah.
not necessarily in your control.
And not all of your systems only rely on you keeping it going. So if
Mm,
your children are going through something or their ages change, because that's when I stopped making dinner, when I started looking even at the patterns in our home. Like one would come home from school and make a full meal and not be hungry at dinner time. Someone else might leave for some practice and not be there. And
mhm.
I have a husband who doesn't care if I cook or not, more like, I don't really feel like eating. So it's just like, why am I doing this? I hate doing it. I used to love it. But I really think because, I don't know if you've read Atomic Habits, but in that book, he talks about the reward is a big part of why we would continue with a habit. And I really think that when I loved to make dinner in high school, the reward was grandma being so happy that I made dinner and having 4 brothers who loved eating it. That wasn't my
Mm.
experience as a mom as much.
No, unfortunately, when you make food for your kids, they almost always are just hating it and don't
I
even eat
know.
it.
I
So,
know. And then as a huge picky eater when I was younger, I'm like, I can't make you eat that. So yeah, yeah. And I don't know. How you have your like little pictures in your brain. I often see my desk in the dorm and how I would write a schedule. I don't think I had a planner, but I loved doing this right. 7 a.m. wake up. 7:30 walk to breakfast. I would plan out everything to the half hour, whatever, to go to classes, come back. And even when I would design my exercise routines that I would do, like for the next 6 weeks, I loved planning that out. And I look back and I see myself either on my bed at night planning that out or on my desk. And I think that was a different person. Because now when I see that, I see a prison and I think, I'm not stepping into that. Like, I can't do that. I can't. There's no way.
Well, and I think when we're in the structure, it can feel really good to be in it,
Hmm.
which is probably like you realize that that would help you be more successful. And so there was a reward in that way.
Hmm. Yeah.
But now that structure isn't as necessary
Hmm.
too.
And in
Um,
college, for the most part, if you're single, you're just responsible for yourself.
yeah.
And it's your whole focus,
Hmm.
even with a part-time job, it's your focus is when I study, what grades I get, all
Hmm.
that. But you did way better in college than I did. I had to realize really fast because my comprehension isn't great that I can be okay with B's and C's. I can't. Even if I spent every hour of every day, I still wouldn't get A's in some class because there's not enough time. So I had
Hmm.
to learn to lower my bar.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah.
and I was a bit of a perfectionist. I mean, I remember I even I because I went to college in a different state than we grew up in, so I had to
Mm-hmm.
get a new license in
Mm-hmm.
the state, and they made me take a written test. And I remember when I was walking out that I my friend had driven with me, and she had been just waiting, and I walked out to the lobby and kind of gave her a look. And the
Mm-hmm.
guy next to her said, "Oh, did she not pass?" And she's like, "No, I bet she just didn't get 100." And I was like, "Ah, I got 98. I missed one question.
Yeah.
I did 19 or 95, 19 out of
Yeah.
20 or something." And it was just, um, I was bothered that I wasn't, I probably should have adjusted some expectations and I could have
Mm-hmm.
been maybe a little bit more functional. I have, my body obviously absorbs some of the stress because I have
Mm-hmm.
some health issues now.
Yeah.
But I think I was just trying to I thought that to be my best, that also meant the best in some ways. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's pretty common.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
there's also just a rush of amazing energy you get by achieving something. That's how I feel with getting things done, accomplishing things, having things in order.
yeah.
And I see things where people are like, that's a women thing. That's a thing that we think we have to be high achievers. And I thought, but I love being a high achiever.
Oh
I
yeah.
feel really, I even see that like when I finish a bottle of conditioner and get to throw it away, I am so happy. Like I'm almost to the bottom. When I take a shower, it bugs me that I'm not on the day that it's at the bottom. But I love completing things, you know?
Completing is fun.
Yeah.
Um, I had a college roommate. She has not been diagnosed with ADHD, but has told me that she thinks she may have it and
Yeah.
that her daughter does.
Yeah.
Um, but she used to just write things so that she could check them off things she'd already done. So it's like I already completed this, but I added it to my list just so that, I can be happy
Grandma
I
used to
completed
do
it.
that, which I may have done with you guys. She used to give us 3x5 cards on a Saturday morning of what we needed to do that day. And, because it was kind of a chore day. But the first one would always say, wake up, get dressed, eat breakfast. And it felt so good because we could go, because we'd
So done
cross them
already.
off. Yeah. And so just remembering how that felt, I kind of do the same thing. Like it might be 10 a.m. and I think, well, you already woke up. You already.
How
But
successful we've been so
yeah,
far.
yeah. And I think with hormonal changes, I think that's why a lot of women are surprised when they're diagnosed, especially see a lot of women online saying like, I'm in my 30s, I'm in my 40s, I'm in my 50s. And they feel kind of like they're the only one. And they see themselves in that earlier decade as I totally did fine with a schedule. I totally, and it's just your hormones keep changing
Yeah.
and your brain function isn't as good. And then if you already have this brain that's not functioning, all the coping skills may not work anymore. You might need to develop new ones. And, you know,
Yeah. And I think, um, I mean, part of why this whole thing is, I think part of why we're undiagnosed younger is because we are doing, um, as girls, a better job maybe fitting in with the expectations around us.
mm-hmm,
But as women, as you get older, typically, a lot of them are carrying the burden of primary family care,
Yeah.
even if they're both working, you
Mm-hmm.
know. That's more of a societal pattern.
Yeah.
And that dynamic is constantly changing. If you think about it, you've got
Mm-hmm.
the childbearing stage, which is one type of thing. And then it's the now getting them to maybe go to school. But then even the school age things change because then you've got different schedules to meet. You've got, um,
Paperwork coming home.
right, you've got
Mm-hmm.
different, it's, and depending if they're in a varied number of ages and stages, it can be hard to be like, okay, this one I need to make sure I get them to basketball practice, but this one I need to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that I'm picking them up and taking them to swimming lessons. And these ones have this homework and these ones don't really have homework, but I need to read to them for 30 minutes a night. And
Mm-hmm.
then that you finally start to figure that out. And then they're 2 years older and
Yeah.
all of the dynamics have shifted again.
All of it changes. Yeah. And I don't know if you mentioned before, you have 4 children. It's, there are the different age and the needs are so different. And that's why with us living, I don't know, what were we, 15, 20 minutes from your high school, that I started saying only one sport a year because I just thought I physically can't do that unless I'd say if you could get a ride with Laura's mom, which was so great that Nancy was able to help with that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I must have known, like, I'm maxing out. I'm maxing out,
Hmm.
But yeah, I also think too, besides hormones, that when you become adults, you have so many things to manage that you didn't. And I first
Oh,
saw
yeah.
when I was still pretty high functioning and I was married and had a full-time job. When the bills came in, I hated the paperwork. I hated that time. Back then it was that time of the month to mail in things with stamps. I keep pulling on this thing. But yeah, you have a lot of adult responsibilities that are really hard to juggle. And paying
Yes,
taxes is like
I
none of
agree.
that stuff you
Well,
learn when you go to school, you know?
yeah. Well, and even if we did learn it, we'd probably forget it because
Yeah. Yeah.
even doing taxes every year, you don't remember year over year. Like it's not
Yeah.
consistent. I was looking for this. This is a bag right here of
Uh-huh.
our mail that I just haven't opened because I don't want to.
Oh, yeah.
Sitting here, I brought it in here and I put it on top of my work computer so that first I put the actual mail on top of my work computer and then I just moved it to the side because I didn't want to open it.
Yeah.
And then it was bothering me to see it, so I put it in the bag. But I'm keeping the bag here because I know I have to do it. There's
Yeah.
things, and there's so many little things that you have to manage and do, and it's just frustrating. I feel
Yeah.
like the only reason I used to be able to function because I had fewer things to manage, but
Mm-hmm.
also I had less accountability or less responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And really what it came down to, the reason why I sought a diagnosis, sought medication, um, was because I realized that my inability to maybe do everything I needed to do wasn't only affecting me, it was affecting my kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When I
Yeah.
put off finally calling a doctor's office because I don't want to have to, one, call them, and then two, find my insurance stuff, and three, look at my calendar and try to figure that out, and four, that means someday we're going to have to go there and I'll have to make sure that I don't forget it. Like I started all of the little steps, thinking of those was overwhelming. And so then I would just put off calling to the next day. But
Yeah.
every day I did that, that was delaying my kids getting their well visit
Oh,
or
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized like I need to be able to
Function.
function enough
Keep
because
track of
they're
all this stuff.
relying on me. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Even, I think I wrote in our notes for today, phone calls and being on hold and all the options. It's amazing how something small can take like 2 or 3 days of effort, and it could happen with your doctor. So I had a doctor's appointment yesterday and spent too much time on Friday trying to call back and then got hung up on a few times. So I tried again. And basically by yesterday, they told me you need to postpone this visit because the doctor's on a personal leave. And then I messaged them because I thought I can't just wait on hold anymore, and just said, please just send me some suggestions for appointments in April and we'll do it. Well, yesterday I get a voicemail saying that my doctor had left their practice. So I did call because I thought, wait a minute. Anyway, he's my doctor and Dad's doctor. And I spent a long time because I didn't want to just make an appointment with another doctor. They said, you can use the same team and be supported by another doctor. But since they were specialists and Dad and I both have different needs for those specialists, I ended up spending a couple hours researching other options for those specialists, making phone calls, which can be fun. It can be going down a rabbit hole and curiosity and you have a new task. But the thing that kind of broke, like you have that breaking moment with ADHD, like this is too much. And it was when you make the phone call and they give you 5 options, if you're not paying attention, like you don't even know they're giving you 5 options till option 2 or 3, and you have ADHD and you're like, sometimes they'll say to repeat these options, but a lot of times they don't. So you have to start over. And then I had to call like 3 times before I remembered to pay attention, and then they give you more options, and then you get someone and you're like, I'm not sure why I got you. Well, we're going to transfer you, or when you do it again,
but then that one hangs up,
Yeah,
so you have to call back again. Which is why I don't want to call in the first place. And then it's been 4 months, and my kids still haven't gone to the dentist because we moved to a new area and had to establish new care.
Yeah,
and then like.
That is part of being an adult. And I tell Dad at that moment, and it's a totally different topic, but it's no mystery to me why there are so many homeless people, because what it takes to be an adult, it's a lot.
So hard.
Insurance, you dropped your insurance, sort that out, emailing, calling, any of these things that might be a small thing for someone else, meaning like the doctor moved. Maybe it wasn't small. Maybe he had to go live near relatives, something drastic. I'm not minimizing other people, and I'm sure that doctor's office is struggling too. But it's like, oh my goodness.
I think the sheer number of things we have to keep track of increases, and then it changes so much. And I think also, though, I think I finally gave myself permission to not be perfect.
Yeah.
And which sounds backwards, but in doing that, I finally accepted maybe responding to things in my own way or not having to do something.
Yeah.
And that compounded the need to get help, if that makes sense. So it's not that I was unable to do the phone call. Part of it was an inability in some ways. Like I didn't want to tolerate it, but in the past I would just tolerate it because I had to. And now I'm finally like, no, I'm in my 30s. I can just not do something if I don't want to. But telling myself that, which is true.
Yeah.
I don't have to do something that I don't want to. It also meant that I wasn't going to be as functional as a person. And I feel like if we go back to the social stuff, a lot of ADHD things in my childhood were maybe missed by teachers because I wasn't giving myself permission to just do whatever I wanted. I was doing what I thought they would want me to do, or what you would want me to do, or my friends would want me to do, behaving in those ways. And it wasn't until I was much older where I was like, okay, it doesn't really matter anymore what the other people think of me. I'm going to do the way that works for me, which sometimes isn't doing laundry for a whole week and a half and then realizing.
Plus, I remember in elementary school kind of learning there's a method when you go into your classroom and you meet your 3rd grade teacher. She tells you what you need to do, but you also get to know her. And your aim is to do as well as you can. So I was having that, the goal is to get the A, because that's what they tell you. This is the best. And so you study the teacher, what she wants, when things need to be done in time, and if you have that ability, you do it. I look at the boys in our family. They didn't always have the ability to remember the forgetfulness. They would do the assignment, but they'd forget to take it out of their backpack. They wouldn't get credit because it was still in their backpack. The teacher would tell them they didn't hear her, or they would think about it but forget to walk over and put it in the basket after completing. And,
Right. Yeah, I
so,
only had that happen one time, and it was devastating, where it was like a month-long project, and then I was told I had never turned it in, and I thought,
yeah,
"That's crazy," because I even went in the classroom for lunches to, like, get
yeah,
help on it. I thought, "You knew that I was working on this. Of course I turned it in." But I just hadn't. It was just in my
yeah.
folder.
Yeah. And
Um,
all those things are important even for life. I think the DMV is like that. They teach us this is a system. You get your car registered, you pay on this date, you do this thing, and you won't lose your license or you won't get a fee. And then somehow you thought you did it, you didn't, and you're paying $100 extra. And it's like,
yeah.
you know,
And I think it's silly because maybe that's why boys are diagnosed younger though, is they're always giving themselves permission to not be perfect or not do what they need to make other people
yeah,
happy.
yeah,
Um, and I just didn't allow myself to do that until I was older.
yeah.
And what that meant though is that I was less functional in society.
Oh, yeah,
Um, and
yeah.
that made me realize, okay, wait, I need help.
Yeah, and even as young adults, I remember we were friends with a man who was a mission president. He had probably 150 male missionaries and about half female missionaries. And he said that he'd have the same goal for both of them. And girls would come in, and he had all daughters. And he said, I'm used to working with daughters and supporting them. But they would come in and often say, I reached the goal, or I didn't reach the goal, and just be in tears, and this is what I did, and I meant to, and I tried this. He would say that the guys would come in, either reach it or not. And if they didn't, they'd say, but what can you do? Like it did not affect them, that it was not emotionally upsetting to them at all that they didn't reach it. They just thought,
Yeah.
I'm fine. And maybe in society they are more fine if they don't reach their goals. I don't know where that comes from or if it's an emotional
Yeah.
thing, but it was just the same condition and the response was, completely different.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if we're taught to, it's probably both. Maybe we want to please younger. You mentioned that baby girls pick up on emotions younger than baby boys. Um,
They've studied and they see that they can look at people's faces, and there's different stages of childhood where they can see an adult's face and absorb their emotion and change their behavior because of that, which can be a good survival skill. But the boys
sure.
didn't have that same ability.
Yeah. At least that young.
Yeah, and women
And
with ADHD are often more empathetic or sympathetic, absorb emotions and that sort
yeah.
of thing.
Well, and
So,
we know that the girls in our family, all of us, we highly absorb the emotions around us. And
yeah,
so and
yeah.
we're trying to alter our behavior or the behavior of others in order to make the emotions around us more pleasant. And so,
Make
but
them
I have
comfortable
noticed,
even if it makes us uncomfortable.
mhm.
Yeah.
And so for a long time, it was making accommodations for myself so that I could act in a way to make the situation better for other people,
Yeah.
whether that was how I was sitting in class or behaving like in my interpersonal relationships with siblings at home. Um, And then as an adult now, I'm like, oh, I need some healthier boundaries, like realizing that I can't. There's way too many emotions. I don't know how you did it with six kids, but I'm like, I've got four kids and a husband and me, and I can't be the one that's responsible for making sure that all of their feelings are positive all the time. That's not healthy. It's not reasonable. And then um, let's see if I can pull this back in. But me recognizing that and accepting that was also part of me. When I give that up, I also sometimes give up a little bit of my strategies that I was using to be more functional. I think that's what I was trying to say is some of my strategies that I had developed were to make things better in a social type of environment. And now that I've given myself permission to not have to try to make things better for the social environment, those strategies are no longer helping me be as functional
Yeah.
because I'm not using them.
Yeah.
They were still good strategies, but
Yeah. Well, I find it also sometimes I decide, okay, you need to not overcompensate or do something so that the other person is more comfortable. When I am more honest with that, sometimes I find myself still with conflict because I'm not happy that there isn't a peaceful situation going on. So sometimes I prefer the peace and my own discomfort instead of not, like taking care of myself so that the other person can be comfortable or uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like then I'm not happy because I do want the other people to be happy. And obviously we can't change that, but we can affect it. So it's really tricky.
yeah.
It's hard. But I also think if you look at yourself and just see where you do well with it, even if you think I've always done it this way, because I think you're strides above me to begin with. And even when I look at the difference between when you were a baby and then when I had babies after that, when you were a baby, every single time you cried, I went to you and I helped you. I would drive on the freeway in LA, and if you cried and there was no exit, I would Dad would hate this, I would pull over on the side of the road and breastfeed you, even if maybe you weren't hungry. I knew that would, you didn't take fast for a fire. But I did what I could to not have you be unhappy and woke up every single night so that you weren't crying. And by the time I was pregnant again, I thought, I cannot go 2 more years waking up every night. And I got used to crying where it was in the car, and you remember the youngest boy in our family. He hated the car seat. He would cry the whole time we drove somewhere, even if it was for 30 minutes, like the first, I don't know how many months. And I would just go, sorry, like we're going to get there, because I was more rational with it. And I learned to be not affected. So that maybe can be an example to me. I can in other ways too, learn to be okay with it.
Yeah, maybe you learn some different strategies. If we're going back to like the ADHD coping or masking, it's like you can change your expectations. And I think sometimes the expectation changes can be good. And I think also they can reveal why maybe we needed to be diagnosed with ADHD as an adult rather than as a kid. Maybe
I think so.
you were like, okay, well, now it's not reasonable for me to plan out all my meals because of ABC. And then you realize, oh, but if I'm not doing that, then I'm not actually able to still accomplish meal planning on the side. And why is that? And that's when you start seeking a diagnosis.
And can this help? Yeah.
Like your overcompensating was helping you be successful for so long. And when you finally stopped, then you realize, oh, there was actually something, there was a reason the whole time why I had to have that strategy supporting me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also great that because I know a lot of women get very discouraged when they find out, like, I'm so mad that I didn't know this any earlier, or sad, or from my younger self or something. But if you do learn more about it and what's happening in your brain, and recognize how you did succeed and all the systems you put in place, like you and I talk about, like, I got to watch a show or listen to something. I got to talk on the phone so I can get, and then you think, well, that is pretty brilliant. I figure, so you can feel good about yourself. And the other thing, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, but I read a woman's post on Reddit in the Women with ADHD sub, and she said, I see all the time women saying, I wish I was diagnosed when I was young. And I'll tell you, I was, and what it was like. And if you look at 10 years, 20 years, 30, all those years before, with what people understood ADHD to be, they responded to her in a way that wasn't healthy. So she received a lot of, like, you have a severe learning disability, that kind of thing. And she just said, yeah. And her mom didn't know very much about it. So she thought that she was terrible. And you know what I mean? Like she was told she couldn't do anything because of this. And she said, I grew up not looking for the possibilities, not looking for the coping mechanisms, because there wasn't a good enough understanding about it to be helpful. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I just thought it was an interesting perspective. And of course, it was her experience, but I thought it was pretty great.
Well, and I think either way, I think there will be, like, I'm very mindful of trying to prevent mental health issues in my child and maybe children. They just haven't all, I haven't sought diagnoses for their children, but with ADHD, because I don't want them to feel frustrated about their functionality in the society we live in. But really, like, the society we live in, and like the school system and even a lot of jobs, they're not built for neurodivergent minds. And and so I think that's where the frustration comes from. And I can see how that can be with knowledge or without knowledge. You can have the frustration knowing, oh, I'm trying to succeed here and I'm not, and it's because I have ADHD, and that makes you mad that you have ADHD and it's this problem. Or it could be, I'm struggling and I don't know why. And then later you find out, oh, it's because of ADHD, and you're mad that you didn't have support all along. Either way, the problem isn't the ADHD, and the problem isn't you either. It was a task or a situation or an environment that isn't structured the way your brain is. But we do have strategies, and like you and I both have said before, a beautiful thing about ADHD is usually a drive to still be able to be successful or to make something work, find another avenue. And so what's great is naturally, I think we do find those coping mechanisms and have, and that's why we're talking about this, is because when you're undiagnosed as a girl, it's usually because you found a way to cope for decades.
Yeah. And I think the more we learn about it, we can share with other people how they can help us too. I think of like a school teacher saying, next Friday, this assignment's due, and she talks about this assignment, and you're thinking, wait, you're just tuning in after all the other information. Like, when is it due? Like, put your hand down, and I've learned this at church too. If an announcement's made, sometimes like there's going to be a big dinner or, whatever it is, they always say the date first. And then they say the event. And my mind doesn't pick up with someone saying a date. But if they talk about, we're going to have a dinner and everyone bring your favorite salad, whatever it is, then I'm thinking, oh, when is that? And they never say the date at the end. And when I'm starting to realize this is why I'm missing out on things, I think I could talk to the person in charge. Maybe teachers are learning things like that, to kind of say things at the beginning or the end. Make sure in a situation like that, kids hopefully could raise their hand, or the teacher wants them to know.
Maybe the beauty in this is that adults with ADHD that were diagnosed later, and since this podcast is for women, it will be women, can use their adulthood to then advocate for what it can look like in the people that so far have been underserved. So maybe their children, other young girls, it's like, this is what this could look like. This is what they might need. These are the things that would have helped me, or just even sharing those coping mechanisms.
Yeah. And you and I are both people that feel like we can make a difference. Some people might just go, no one's going to listen to me, but hopefully whoever's listening, you can see you can make a difference. Even me, I'm just thinking about it, writing to my doctor and saying, I can't keep calling in. Can we do this by message? And they might see this system isn't sufficient. I have another doctor's appointment I want to cancel, but it takes a long time to call in, and I can't just do it on the app. I think, why can't, or the text. Sometimes they'll say text back, cancel, but one doctor doesn't. I'm like, it would be nice.
It would be.
Yeah, even online. I looked at their online app, and they won't let me cancel that way. But anyway, I know you have to go. You have the dog groomer coming.
Yeah, I've transferred My dog trainer thinks that my dog also has ADHD and anxiety inherited from me, probably. It's
Probably
not even
it's
like
inherited from the poodle aspect of that dog.
maybe she has, yeah, I mean, that's a high energy dog, but also I think the dog picks up on our energy.
Oh, for
So
sure.
it's like if someone comes and I forgot that they're coming, and then when they come and then their dog's barking and I haven't put her somewhere, and then I stress out and I'm like, "Oh no, go sit down." Then the dog thinks, "Oh no, someone's coming." And when someone comes, this is
Yeah.
how we respond.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's her.
Yeah. Well, this
So
has been a
I'm
little,
learning.
I'm excited. And I just looked because I had a little window. I couldn't see. This is our longest episode.
Woo! You're
Woohoo,
welcome,
woohoo.
listeners. My mom and I can talk for hours.
I know it. I know it. And I'm excited,
Well, thank
excited.
you.
So thank you so much for being here, Sabra. I hope everyone leaves this episode feeling like you could evaluate your childhood, you could evaluate how you're doing now, and know that it's just all just a journey, and hopefully feel good about yourself.
Yeah, hopefully there was some validation, but also some hope.
Yeah, exactly. That's my hope. All right. I have to end with
Yeah,
love you, Sabra.
me too.
And I'll say goodbye to everyone else. Oh, Sabra, tell us where we can find you if anybody wants to find you online.
Oh yeah, because not only do I homeschool and work part-time and do all that, I also run a little Etsy shop, especially for those people that like reading books or like Taylor Swift. It's called lyricsandlit.etsy.com, and I sell little designs on there because I need a creative outlet. So
Yeah. A little bit of Anna
I'm
Green
also on
Gables on
Instagram.
there.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll
What
add
did you?
more too. If anyone,
Yeah. And you're also on Threads, right? With Lyrics and
yes,
Lit.
yep, same name, Lyrics
Yeah.
and Lit.
Yeah. She has a fun little, what do you call it? Community there of other women who love Taylor Swift and lyrics of songs. That's what
Yep,
drew me to
and a lot of
Sting.
them are neurodivergent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I listened to Sting's lyrics. I'm like, do we know how good these are? And when I finally listened to Taylor Swift with headphones, I thought the same thing.
Yeah, what
She's
a genius.
amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll let you go. Love you, Sabra.
Love you. Bye.
And goodbye to everyone else. Bye.